Today on Detroit Muscle, it's time to get the Trans Am ready for a coat of that glossy black paint. Learn how you can take cracked plastic panels and fix them up real nice. Get rid of those pesky decals for either paint prep or a cleaner look, and feast your eyes on a Plymouth tire shredder.
Our Trans Ams came a long way since we bought it and brought it home to the shop. First on the agenda was to build a potent stroke Pontiac power plant. Filled with top shelf performance parts, after we painted it poncho blue, we backed it with a new 700R tranny and dropped it between the TA's fenders. Then to feed it, we topped it off with some fuel injection.
To make it ride as well as it roars, we upgraded the entire front suspension, then gave it better brakes to haul down all that horsepower. Out back, we dropped the stock 10-bolt rear end for a massive makeover, including new gears, a posi unit, and a pair of new axles. Then after a drum-to-disc brake conversion, we stabbed the rear back in place, followed by more suspension upgrades, including a set of lower springs.
We finished up underneath with a new, better flowing exhaust before custom making a pair of subframe connectors to stiffen up the chassis.
Well, now it's time to start the TA's transformation from red to iconic banded black and gold. You know, the body on this old bird's not too bad. In fact, it's pretty darn solid. However, that doesn't mean we can just hose on some black paint and slap on decals.
Yeah, that's no joke. This thing is going to need some love and attention in the sandpaper department. But before we get all that started, there's a few little items we want to take care of to make sure this thing's one nice ride. Whenever you're taking a look at purchasing one of these second-gen F-bodies, you want to look at the side panels on them, because these things, well, if they're broken up and tore up and you have to replace them, well, they can be a little bit pricey. Whenever I was taking a look at ours, they do have a few little cracks in them, but nothing that's unrepairable. Now you can't just go to snatching on this thing by taking off those 3 screws and expect it to fall out. You've got 2 studs that have to be removed from the inside of the quarter panel. It's not that big a deal, but you just gotta make sure you do it. And you can see right here, this old car was a factory black ride. Okay, the next thing we need to do is take our little small grinder here and kind of dig out a bevel into this crack. What that does is that increases our surface area where we're planning to bond, giving us a stronger repair. Yeah, somebody's already tried to repair it once. If you notice, I'm trying to use it at a low speed, because if you use it at a high speed, it'll just melt the plastic and kind of ball up on one side. That's pretty good. We're just about midway of our repair here. The next thing you want to do is take an air gun and kind of blow off all the dust and debris, and then follow it up with some acetone. This stuff doesn't leave a residue like a lot of the other cleaners, because you want to make sure that your panel you're working on, well, it's free from oil or grease or something like that as well. Now, whenever you're getting ready to wipe some of this stuff down, there's a little technique that you need to keep in mind. Let's say you was pouring this stuff on there and you went to wiping on it. Well, a lot of people would take it and dump that on there like that. That's a no-no. See, this is why. We've got a clean rag, we got a lot of this dust here, and this is what happens whenever you do the cleaning on there. Well, whenever you take the bottle, lay it on the top, dump it over a time or two, you're just putting all those contaminants back inside that bottle, and that can bite you in the tail later down the road. So what you want to do is take your rag and pour the stuff on top of it. That way, it keeps it out of there.
All right, my man, you ready for some sticky stuff?
Is that a trick question?
I hope not. You know, there are all kinds of adhesives out there on the market for jobs like ours, and some, like this 2-part adhesive we got from Single Source, are used by collision and body shops, and well, this is the kind of stuff that'll work on metal, fiberglass, and plastic. Shall we? Hey, before we mix equal parts of this stuff, here's a little tip for you. Use a piece of metal for your mixing surface. Otherwise, if you use cardboard, well, it's going to soak up the liquid and give you an uneven mix.
Something to remember while you're laying down your epoxy. The closer you can get it to being nice and level to the surface of the part, the less sanding you'll have to do once it's cured. So don't go bonkers with it. Now you may see this and think the stuff is turning loose. It's no big deal because it's still way too high. Once I sand it all down, this edge will be completely gone with a good strong bond.
Once we're satisfied with the repair, we can make it pretty with a little plastic filler. Remember, the epoxy is for structure, the body filler, well, that's for appearances.
Still ahead, we'll show you how to unload the gooey bits when your ride's been sticker-fied. We'll rewind the clock to get the skinny on a MOPAR with some flex appeal. And then it's a one-of-a-kind modification for our Trans Am that brings the honeycomb scheme one step further.
Hey, we're back with some more body work on our Pontiac, and goes without saying, this bird flew from the factory with a lot of decals on it, all of which have to be removed before any serious paint work. Now, if you poke around on the internet, you'll find a lot of methods for doing this, everything from hair dryers to chemicals, but we like this simple stripe-off wheel, which kind of acts like a big giant pencil eraser. It's easy and it's fast. Now, this thing does work like a charm to roll these decals off the car, but one word to the wise: don't hammer on the trigger and apply a bunch of pressure in one spot. You can, by way of friction, build up enough heat at the surface to damage your finish. See, I told you it worked pretty good.
Oh, Joe just showed you a cool trick to use on that little rubber eraser wheel, but I've got another little thing you might be interested to see: a plastic razor blade. Now, whenever you go to scraping off some decals, you can do it with a metal one, but it takes a whole lot more skill and a lot more effort to pay attention to make sure you don't mess up the paint surface. But these can be pretty handy. Adding a bit of heat to removing a decal can help a bunch, and whenever you're using it on an old one, it helps that much more. The heat gun softens the vinyl in the decals. It makes it a lot more pliable, which in turn makes it a lot easier to peel off. Anyone who has ever tried to peel these off without any heat can tell you it's a lot easier this way. Well, looks like the old Trans Am stickers is still sticking around, kinda. We've got to work on getting rid of the goo. Now, we're going to just use some acetone, and since we're just painting this car, but if you had a car that you were removing the decals and you cared about the paint, you want to make sure whatever you're using doesn't damage your finish. Also, like we are, since we're painting this thing, you want to make sure not to use anything oil-based to get this stuff off, because that can be quite a catastrophe whenever you're trying to paint over top of oil. Ugh. That'd be a mess.
Now, it could be that you apply a little acetone and this stuff just slides right off the finish. If that's the case, hey, good for you. Expect to make a few passes with both your chemical and razor blade, though.
And sometimes this old nasty glue is pretty darn stubborn, and it seems like the acetone is just smearing it around. Keep at it, because it's getting gunky like that due to the acetone breaking down the glue.
Now, we're getting our decals out of the way so we can paint this TA, but if you were just trying to get rid of all the decals because you didn't like them, here's a case where peeling them wouldn't work. You can't see it, but you can definitely feel it. Somewhere along the way, this one got clear coated. The only way it's coming off is sand it or grind it. So if you're going to do that, you're going to have to paint it anyway.
Coming up, we'll show you why this big yellow Plymouth is going commando. With big block power and numbers matching from top to bottom, there's a heck of a story behind this bruiser. Then, it's custom honeycomb mods for a Trans Am treat. Today, Detroit Muscle salutes the 1971 Plymouth GTX.
Everyone knows that Motor City was responsible for 60s and 70s Detroit muscle, But just across the river in Windsor, Ontario, B-bodies by the thousands were also being assembled, including this one.
Hey, you hosers, check this out, eh?
This is the rare 71 Plymouth GTX. It was one of the many MOPARs of the day based on the Belvedere satellite platform. Super Bs, Coronets, Chargers, and Roadrunners, all intermediate offerings from Chrysler. The GTX debuted in '67, positioned as the gentleman's hot rod. A race-ready performer just a notch above the rest in styling and comfort. '68 got a redesign with a few more curves, but one thing remained. Standard was the 440 cubic inch V8, dubbed the Super Commando.
Huge design changes in '71 gave the GTX a more streamlined fuselage look, with rounded corners and looped bumpers front and rear, and a sloped fastback roof style. This one belongs to brothers LARS and SKRODER.
Like, we traded it for a couple six-packs.
And we got it back.
And our favorite toque.
Of course, they're kidding.
Some Molson.
1987, Langley, British Columbia. Two wide-eyed Canadian teens pooled their coins for their dream car.
We didn't have any automotive experience, so we bought the manual, the original manual, and we were doing some detail work, finally put the engine in the car and cranked it over, and didn't realize that, was it the lifters?
We had a solid lift cam and we'd put hydraulic lifters in, so we bent some push rods.
Bent a push
right
rod.
away.
So in the summer of '88, we closed the barn door and didn't open up until 2007.
And man, was it worth the wait. The brothers meticulously brought it back to its original glory. Their numbers matching GTX is just one of 135 made, with curious yellow paint and white interior, even rarer because it's a Windsor car. Sporty, functional, with comfortable bucket seats, wood grain accents, and an original padded steering wheel.
Under the hood, this bad boy sports the optional 6-pack over the standard 4-barrel. While many MOPARs were detuned for the new decade, the GTX held steady, pushing 385 horses and 490 pound-feet of torque. Tipping the scales at 2 tons, the GTX earned quarter-mile ETs well under 14 seconds, and a 0 to 60 time of 6 seconds at 100 miles per hour. Heavy-duty leafs came standard, and a wider rear track improved handling.
Driving the car is great. It actually is, like, as weird as it sounds, like driving a new car. Not because it's been restored, but power disc brakes and power steering. It's fun and enjoyable to drive. It does get attention, but that's just a bonus, I guess.
It got a lot of attention at the MOPAR Nationals in Columbus, winning its class and chosen the top performance pick out of 2,500 entries. That earned a trip to the SEMA Show's MOPAR Alley.
We look back and we thought maybe if we would have put it together when we were teenagers, maybe we would have, you know, put a sunroof in it or changed the seats or kind of modified it in some way, or maybe parted it out somehow or crashed it up. So maybe it was a good thing it sat there for almost 20 years till we can really appreciate it.
After the break, we're going to put some detail work on the giveaway Trans Am, converting factory rectangle sadness into customized honeycomb badness. Stick around.
Well, all right, guys, we made some pretty good headway getting ready for the paint and body work on our Trans Am. Next thing we're going to do is add a little bit of detail to this side scoop. First order of business is getting it out of the fender. Once the inner fender is out of the way, you can remove 4 nuts and the scoop slides right off. So what the plan is to replace this little grill in here with one that we picked up from our local steel supplier. This cool little piece here is honeycombed, and it's going to match the grill in the front of the Trans Am. So we've got to get this old one out of it. Now originally, this little steel mesh is either glued in with some kind of epoxy or an adhesive, and we've got to get it out. You could use let's say a heat gun and heat this stuff up and pry it out, or you could do like we're going to do and use a little pry tool like a pocket knife and kind of pop it out.
The beauty of this step is, since the thing's going away, you can get ornery with it if you have to. Just remember, you're also trying to save the piece of fiberglass it's attached to.
Okay, now we have to get the old glue off, and if we can't pop it off, we'll just have to use the grinder. Well, I got just about all the glue off, but now I've got to come back with a little small grinder to prep the surface around here. Now this thing is originally made from fiberglass, so you want to be real careful with it, not get too aggressive, because you can mess it up. With the surface prep, the honeycomb metal that we're going to use can be marked where we want to snip it. Leave plenty of room to attach it to the scoop.
A pair of 10 snips is all we need to cut out the piece that we'll be using. No need for overkill.
Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is take a little dead blow hammer here and kind of smash these back flat, because you can see they're tweaked just a bit from snipping them. Then I'll toss it into the blaster and we'll be ready to glue it on. Well, I've got my piece all prepped. Now we're ready to bond it to the scoop. And to do that, I'm going to use some of this 2-part epoxy that we showed you how to use earlier in the show. A little bit of this stuff goes a long way. It's not a structural component after all. There you go. That's one of those little bitty details that can add quite a bit to your ride. And let's say with a little bit of paint work and some taping, it can look like this. That's one sweet little scoop.
Impact wrenches pretty much look alike, but the true test is in the torque. This new composite 1/2-inch impact from Matco tools has, get this, 1,300 pounds of breakaway torque. With that kind of grunt, you can break loose even the baddest, most stubborn fasteners. You're in full control too with a variable speed trigger and a one-hand push-button design. It's got a lightweight body weighing in at just over 4 pounds. Plus, it's got a new custom ergonomic handle and a 2-year warranty.
Now everybody's got WD-40 in their shop, but here's a new twist to an old favorite. The new WD-40 Trigger Pro Non-Aerosol. The same multi-purpose formula, now delivered in a heavy-duty, leak-proof trigger to send just the right amount where you need it. It has 2 settings, spray and stream, plus an off position, so there's no danger of a miss from accidental spray. So if you're in an aerosol sensitive area, they've got you covered.
Have you ever gone to a car show and you walk upon what seems to be a perfectly restored muscle car, but look under the hood and there's a modern day battery? Well, that won't win you points with the judges or other car guys. TurboStart makes Restoration Series batteries that give your classic the looks you want and the maintenance-free service you need. They have individual cells for optimum performance and special plates inside to maximize cranking power. And to seal the deal, an officially licensed hard rubber case with exact OE details and lettering. TurboStart offers these for classic GMs, Fords, and MOPARs, and best of all, they're all made right here in the USA. Well, like our next show. See you then.